The U.S. Arab Radio Network is proud to offer the Ray Hanania Show with veteran journalist Ray Hanania, the U.S. correspondent for the Arab News newspaper. U.S. Arab Radio broadcasts content Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. on WNZK AM 690 in Detroit, WDMV 700 in Washington, D.C., and simulcast through stations around the country. Programs will rerun from 5 till 6 p.m. Visit us on Facebook at U.S. Arab Radio. And we're also streaming live on Facebook.com/Arab News.
And good morning, everybody. This is Ray Hanania here at the Ray Hanania Show on WNZK AM 690 Radio in Greater Detroit and WDMV AM 700 Radio in Washington, D.C. We're streaming live on the U.S. Arab Radio Network at arabradio.us and live at Arab News, Facebook.com/Arab News. I'm Ray Hanania, and we got a great show this morning. In segment one, we're going to look at the campaign and candidacy of Arab American political empowerment and civil rights attorney Tahanie Aboushi. She ran for Manhattan District Attorney General in New York. Though she did not win, she ran an impressive campaign and came in third place, I believe, and I call that the equivalent of winning the bronze medal, which is a huge achievement at the Tokyo Olympics. Later on at segment two at the bottom of the hour, we're going to talk with Paul Salem of the Middle East Institute about the political turmoil in Lebanon. What's causing it? Why hasn't anything been done a year after the massive explosion at a warehouse at Beirut's port that took the lives of nearly 214 people? There are still no repairs, no answers. It's just a mess. So we're going to look at that. But we're going to take a quick break here at the Ray Hanania Radio Show. And when we come back, we're going to talk with Tahanie Aboushi, someone who I think is a star in the Arab American community when it comes to politics. She's done a lot, and we're going to help introduce her to Detroit, Washington, D.C., and the rest of the country. I'm Ray Hanania. We're going to be right back right after these messages.
ArabNews.com, bringing you breaking news from across the Middle East and the latest on Arabs in America. Get inside the latest headlines with expert analysis and insights at ArabNews.com. Join over 5 million Facebook fans and over 10 million monthly readers. ArabNews.com, news that matters to you. At Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic in Dearborn, we provide effective physical therapy sessions in order to limit pain and discomfort. Top Rehab provides physical therapy care for any diagnosis prescribed by a physician, and we regularly see and treat conditions such as stroke, TMJ, fibromyalgia, sciatica, joint pain, and more. We use a variety of pain management methods, including modalities, soft tissue mobilization, and therapeutic exercise. If you're in need of physical rehabilitation or physical therapy, get the highest quality health care at Top Rehab. Most insurance is accepted, and we're open Monday, Wednesday, and Friday 8 to 6, Tuesday and Thursday 8 to 5, and Saturday 10 till 2. Call for an appointment today at 313-846-0555. That's 313-846-0555. Choose Top Rehab Physical Therapy Clinic on Michigan Avenue in Dearborn. Life's too short to be in pain. Enjoy the first Syrian-style cuisine in Michigan. At Damas Cuisine and Catering, you'll find a wide selection of Syrian foods and sweets in our menu, like frikeh, hoisin, grape leaves with steak, mashawi platter, hot mahashi, char-grilled kebab, shawarma, and much more. Get super fast delivery from Damas Cuisine and Catering right to your door. Order online at damascuisine.com/menu and track your order live. Damas Cuisine and Catering, 28841 Orchard Lake Road in Farmington Hills. Call 248-987-4985.
While we've been staying safe at home, scientists have been on a journey. The destination, a COVID-19 vaccine. This journey began decades ago with research into other coronaviruses. Scientists built from there with months of research and development, cooperation with other experts worldwide, and clinical trials on tens of thousands of volunteers of diverse race, age, and health status. They arrived at a safe, effective vaccine, and hundreds of thousands in Michigan have already been vaccinated. But the next step is ours. We need to get the vaccine when we can. Keep wearing masks correctly and taking precautions until we reach our destination, freedom from COVID-19, and getting back to the lives we love. Discover the facts for yourself at michigan.gov/COVID vaccine. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
The U.S. Arab Radio Network is proud to offer the Ray Hanania Show with veteran journalist Ray Hanania, the U.S. correspondent for the Arab News newspaper. U.S. Arab Radio broadcasts content Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. on WNZK AM 690 in Detroit, WDMV 700 in Washington, D.C., and simulcast through stations around the country. Programs will rerun from 5 till 6 p.m. Visit us on Facebook at U.S. Arab Radio, and we're also streaming live on Facebook.com/Arab News.
Of course, I've been in politics all my life as a journalist covering Chicago politics and Midwest politics. There we go. We got rid of that little buzz there. But so politics is always in my blood, and it's always been exciting as an Arab American, a Palestinian American, to see other Arab Americans get into politics. And over the past 45 years, it's been a slow rise. But I'll tell you, recently, we've seen some real talent going for some big offices. And my guest, who is on the line with me, is and on Zoom with us, by the way, live on Facebook on Arab News with 5.6 million viewers. I'm sure every one of them is watching right now, so don't be nervous, Tahanie. Tahanie Aboushi is a Palestinian-American civil rights lawyer and partner at the Aboushi Law Firm in New York City with two of her siblings. She was a Democratic candidate for Manhattan District Attorney in June 2021 and did great, I think. Tahanie, thank you so much for joining us on radio.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me, Ray.
Yeah, I mean, why does anybody get involved in politics? It's such a mess. They call you names. They attack you. Nothing that any politician ever does satisfies anyone. Half the population of a place is upset with you. Why would you want to do that?
Because whether you like it or not, when you sit it out, decisions are made on your behalf and you're not at the table. Your voice is not heard. And I think there's always value and benefit in making sure that you are at the table. Just like you said, you've been doing this for 45 years and it's a slow rise, but there's a rise. And I think that Arab Americans need to have their voices heard much louder and that we're impacted by these policies. So we should make sure that we're part of shaping that conversations to create policies that are actually going to work for all of our families.
Well, we saw this week, actually last night, where an Arab American actually is now in the running for mayor of Dearborn, which is a pretty cool thing. I think it's State Representative Abdullah Hammoud. And we had him on the show in the fall. What a smart guy. And that's the nice thing about politics, at least for the Arab American community. We don't always win, but we have such great talent. I mean, he's phenomenal. You're phenomenal. When I go through your resume and everything, it's just impressive. And I'm thinking, if my parents were looking at me as a very successful lawyer, they'd say, stay out of politics. Go and make money. Be a doctor, Tahanie. Didn't that tell you to be a doctor and engineer? How'd you end up being a lawyer?
You know, my father really encouraged us to just do as much as we can. And two of my older siblings went to law school first. Two of my siblings are doctors, so they took that burden off of me, allowed me to be a lawyer. And you know, I took a lot of notes from my parents. Our community is very family oriented, is into helping people. My parents always helped a lot of people. And I just wanted to be a voice that knew how to get things done in a meaningful way. And I'm very into policy changes. And I felt like the law allowed me to do that, to really challenge some of the rules that I think didn't work for people, to make sure that we protect our civil liberties, our constitutional rights, and be a force for unification among people. And that's why I got into the law, and that's why I do civil rights work specifically. I think it's really important to make sure that we balance the scales of justice and that people's voices are heard and protected.
Yeah, and it's especially important now. Obviously, we're coming around to the 20th anniversary of the September 11th attacks. Geez, I'm in Chicago, and I had people coming up to me after September 11th saying, why did my people do this? Like, I'm guilty. I can't even imagine what it was like to be Arab American in New York City at that time. People were angry at us. When someone commits suicide, they're gone. You can't punish them. So they look around. The public looks around for anybody that looks as close to the person that they're angry with as possible, and that's you and me. And I don't know, what was it like after September 11th for you? And we're talking 20 years ago.
Well, I was in high school at the time. I think
Wow.
it was horrible. It was traumatic. It was a tragedy for me to see my country in turmoil like that, but then couldn't even mourn it the way you would want to and be afraid the way you'd want to because of those personal attacks, the stereotypes. We had a lot of horrible policies come out of that moment that targeted Muslims, targeted Arabs, people who appeared to be Muslim or Arab. And it was an attempt, I feel like, to kind of push us into the shadows of society. But we're here and we're part of this country and part of building a very strong fabric of this country. And the Muslim community pushed back, our allies pushed back, and we ensured that we weren't pushed into the shadows of society or scapegoated for the wrongdoing of a handful of people.
Yeah, and you know that they happen to be Arab, but they don't represent us. I didn't know those people. You didn't know them. I think it's amazing that, you know, we have done so much. You as an American, me as an American. I served during the Vietnam War. Honestly, at the time, I wasn't excited about it. But today, now, people come up and say, what did you do? I said, hey, I served in the Vietnam War. What did you do? And they look and they didn't serve at all. And I go, come on, you're attacking me for being Arab. I'll take you right to the recruiter right now. We'll sign you up. You be as patriotic as I've been. And that usually shuts them up. But the point is that you and I are American. We do so much for this country. We love this country. We support it. And like everybody else, correct? We're very proud of where we came from. And we want to share that heritage. Why are we treated differently? It just doesn't seem fair.
And I think as much as we love this country, we shouldn't be afraid to criticize her. We shouldn't be afraid to push for better policies. This country has always been in a state of changing laws, changing rules to make sure we live in a fair, equal, just, equitable society. And that means looking at things we're not doing right and making sure we can do them right and do things better.
Yeah, I think that criticism of our government is so important. Criticism of any government, you could do that. I think it's part of what makes democracy so important. Right. And another aspect is running for office. And, you know, knowing how tough it is, what pushed you to cross the line? Had you run before for public office? This is your first time?
I've never run before. It was my first time. I'm pretty involved in local politics in my city. For me, as a civil rights attorney, I see the impact of these policies firsthand, whether it's police accountability, police brutality, discrimination, racism, issues with immigration. I mean, these are issues that I've always said on the campaign were our kitchen table conversations, stories that are shared by thousands of families in New York City. And I wanted to bridge the gap between politicians or people who run for office that have never walked in our shoes and the community that deals with their decision making on a daily basis. And I think it was the right time. It was the right time for criminal justice reform. It was the right time on the heels of the George Floyd protest where we can now talk about police accountability in a meaningful way. And I think it was important because a lot of people were feeling the frustrations on top of that with the impact of COVID. Why aren't we prepared? Why aren't we ready for something like this? And it pushed all of our systems into overdrive and efficiency. So the conversations about, well, this agency or organization is just too big to do something about. Well, COVID is telling you now you have to do something about it and do something about it structurally. And it allowed us to examine the criminal justice system, how our courts operate, how our police operate, how integration and preventative measures are working or not working, and then actually propose policies to do them better.
What was it like as a Arab American, a Palestinian American, a Muslim running in the election? I'm sure that it had to be part of the election debate. And obviously sometimes it always comes out in an ugly way against us. But sometimes it becomes very positive. Tell us your experience. What was it like? How was it used against you? Was it used for you? How did it balance out in the election?
I think it was positive. It was something that was visibly something people saw first. Oh, she's Muslim. She wears hijab. She's Palestinian. Okay, great. But my story and my work is something that preceded my appearance for a long time. And so people knew who I was, who I am. People have seen my cases, have seen where I've been in the community. So everybody's like, we know Tahanie. And it would be great to have something different. Every single Manhattan district attorney has been a white male since the beginning of its time. And out of 8 candidates, the 3 people of color took the top 3 spots. I think that's something that's quite telling about what a place like Manhattan is ready for, not only policy, but somebody that comes from a different background.
And that's why I think what you did was so significant. I mean, you ran 3rd, I believe, and I thought you did very well. And I thought that a lot of people supported you, although I think we could have probably done more to help you. But it's such a tough issue because there's so many issues. Some voters can't get past the fact of who we are to deal with the issues. How did you address that?
We stayed focused on the issue at hand, my personal experience, my work on the ground. I think for me, the race was tough in part because we did have essentially a billionaire in the race,
right,
who had all the money in the world to spare. And I think that was difficult. It was somewhat of a crowded field. So we were up against a lot. But I will say we did have positive reception. I don't think at least not visibly, that was necessarily a hindrance. I think it allowed for really great conversations about what could be when all communities unite behind an issue and unite behind somebody that has walked in their shoes. And so we've done that. We've changed what the face of the Manhattan District Attorney's Office is going to look like, but I think we still have a lot of work to do. And there are still a lot of first times for the Arab American community. First time we run for certain offices, whether it's the school board or Congress, Senate, district attorney, you name it. And so it's also the process of letting people become familiarized with seeing people like us run for offices like these.
Yeah, and being Arab American and being American, we're seeing more and more Arab candidates run for office. And the question comes up, do I support the candidate just because they're Arab American? And when I don't, some people say, why didn't you support that candidate? And I think it comes down to the issues. And I think we have to be part of that debate. And I thought you brought up the issues really well. What was the most important issue? And I mean, I don't want to say it, but I mean, what was the most important issue and how did you address it that resonated with the voters in Manhattan? Which, by the way, running for Manhattan District Attorney is a huge, endeavor. It's a great office, and most of us have learned about that office through that TV series Billions. Okay, that's where we hear about the Manhattan DA. You have an Arab woman on that show. Okay, so even though you don't win, I hope they slate you for that because you deserve it. But what was the one issue that you felt resonated with voters, or could have resonated more?
I think one major issue was police accountability. A lot of people were frustrated with everything from the concern around crime to lack of preventative measures, to lack of measures that actually address the underlying issue. And this is an agency with billions of dollars, with over 30,000 members. And so it wasn't a matter of lack of resources. It was a matter of lack of accountability where people felt their rights were being violated and there just was too much power on that side of the scale. And that its impact on the ground was pretty devastating to communities. And so I wanted to allow people the comfort to have that conversation to say, look, we put no badge or bank account above the law. We need to examine how we are doing things. There must be accountability because you can have a society that is both safe, but also ensures that accountability for police. And that's something we were able to accomplish.
Yeah, and that is obviously a touchy topic. Defunding the police has risen to be one of the among the top 3 most controversial issues that sometimes people never get to see the facts about. They only respond with emotion. Abortion, right? That's one of the big ones. You could talk about all of them. And I agree that we need to, if a police officer commits a crime, they need to be held accountable. What I don't agree with, and I know that is part of this big debate, is I don't want to stereotype all police.
Of course.
I support the police, and I wonder how you view that aspect of this debate.
Well, I think that it's not about whether you like police or not. I think they're public servants, and there's patrol guides and things that govern their conduct, just like any other profession, just like any other civil servant. And my work is impact litigation. I've changed the NYPD patrol guide. I meet with their top brass. We've worked on changing their policies because the focus is not on whether or not you like police. It's Are we doing right by the people? Are the rights protected? Is the conduct appropriate? And how do we continue to make it better? And I think it was important to address the systemic racism, why the overwhelming majority of people of color are criminalized and incarcerated in our system. And that was something that I wanted to address. And it starts with policing, because police are our introduction before the district attorney's office comes into play. So for me, I'm someone that likes to get to the root cause. I don't do patch jobs. I want to overhaul, see what are we doing wrong, and then build the system that works. And I felt like those two things went hand in hand. And there are a lot of people who were pro-police that were on board with this message. There were officers that I've spoken to that say, yeah, we can do things better. We shouldn't be working on these things. We should be doing things better. We should do things this way, especially when it came time to conversations around training. So I think when you look at the micro level of how these issues were playing out in the race, it was one that had support on both sides.
Yeah, and I think most police, there are two ways that two issues that face them. One, they got the people out there that are just upset with police. They stereotype police the way they stereotype us as Arabs. I sometimes I would use the analogy to say I feel like I'm a police officer the way people treat me as a Palestinian. They're mad at me because of something I had nothing to do with, and yet they're trying to punish me. And I think when we look at the issue in that context, especially you and me being Arab, we go through that all the time. I don't want to be stereotyped. And I don't want my people to be stereotyped. And there are a lot of police that think that's what's happening. But you were able to kind of bridge that then and communicate with police and get support from the police. I think a lot of police don't want to see crime among their ranks. It's the worst thing that could possibly happen. You also had some other policies that I thought were interesting, taking a look at how severely we punish individuals who are convicted of lesser crimes. Talk about that a little bit.
For me, it was important to not only talk about mass incarceration, but the mass criminalization, particularly of people of color, because they make up over 75% of arrests and prosecution in our city. And it's essentially, when somebody is arrested and prosecuted, they have a record forever. And whether or not these cases are resolved by trial or by fines and fees, we've now dictated the trajectory of this person's life. And I would even say their children and generations to come, because that is how permanent a decision is when you prosecute, criminalize, incarcerate. And over 70% of the Manhattan District Attorney Office's docket were low-level offenses that were resulting in these convictions that have fines and fees attached. So essentially relegated this office to being a debt collector. And again, people had these records attached to them and then sent back into the world and, okay, go apply for a job, go try and buy a home, graduate school, attempt to live in a productive life, knowing that this record will now be an obstacle every time you try to do something right. And so it trapped people in this vicious cycle where they couldn't move up or even be among their peers in society. And that cycle of bad decisions continued. And I wanted to examine that and understand, well, if we're arresting and prosecuting people for all these crimes, but the case is being resolved in these violations and it's all about fines and fees, why are we criminalizing people in the first place? Why are these things happening? Is there a better way to approach it? One, wrongful convictions, wrongful arrests. But then for those that aren't wrongful, how do we ensure preventative measures? How do we ensure rehabilitation beyond just slapping them on the wrist with a fine and fee and then never looking back until they come back into the system again?
And we're talking about these nonviolent crimes, basically, right? Correct? Because when it comes to violent crimes, I think we have to be tough, and there's a measured way to do it. You're in the area. I'm just an observer, a reporter, columnist. That opinions come easy for me, and I'm sure that I've noticed that in today's world where everybody is a blogger, everybody's a writer, everybody has an opinion, we assert those opinions. They get very emotional. But your position on violent crime, how strong is that? Do you want to see change? What's the issue with violent crime?
So the first thing is a lot of things can be considered violent crime. Things that don't include victims, things that include objects. If you're stealing an Amazon package from a lobby and you have a box cutter in your back pocket, that's considered a violent crime. Oh. And so for the public, the lay people who aren't involved in the criminal justice system, either by practice or otherwise, when you hear the word violent crime, you're thinking of the worst of the worst. And so your mind automatically blocks off alternatives to incarceration or anything worse than we have to do the worst possible thing back to teach a lesson. For me, it was important to break down what do we mean by violent crime. And we have to have a nuanced approach that addresses what actually happened, not our emotion of how big something could or couldn't be. And so when you look at that, you can't apply the same rubric of punishment to everybody that falls under the violent crime category. The second thing was for me is when you prosecute, why? What is our goal? Is it just to put somebody in jail for 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years and spend millions of dollars on that incarceration? Or do we care about rehabilitation? What is the plan for re-entering society when someone is released? How have we supported the victim? Have we ensured that there's support there, that there's rehabilitation on that front? And the answer is none of that exists. And we also need to create incentives for early release, right? If we're putting someone away for 5, 10, 15 years, how are we sure that that rehabilitation happens? And so when you incentivize it by saying, if you can complete these programs, if you can show rehabilitation, there can be an opportunity for early release. And again, it's nuanced, right? So it's on a case-by-case basis, as opposed to this blanket policy that captures everybody in it, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of the needs and wants of the victim, and regardless of its impact on the community as a whole.
We only have a few more minutes left, Tahanie, and again, it's a pleasure to have you on this program. It really is nice to meet you. You ran in a phenomenally important race, and I think you did really well. Was it and again, I want to just go back to that aspect, was it not enough money to reach voters? Was it Arab and Muslim? What was it that prevented you from winning?
Well, you never know the exact reason. You can always use money in a race, especially a race like Manhattan, especially when you're up against billionaires. But I think, although we didn't actually win the seat, I think we won in terms of the way we ran the campaign, the endorsements that we got, the inspiration that we were able to extend to people to make them see something different, and policies that in other places maybe would not have played well, but in a place like Manhattan got us over 25,000 votes. And to me, that's a win. So we've paved the way, and whatever comes next, I think is going to be good for Manhattan, good for New York City, and politics for our country as a whole.
And I'm going to ask, before we say thank you for joining us, what's your next race going to be? Because once you're in, you will never be out. So we know you're going to run for something. What is it going to be? Congress, Senate, President?
Right now I'm back to doing my first love, which is civil rights work. Getting back to a lot of policy changes and things that need to be done on the ground. So that's where my focus is. But my eye is always on politics, making sure that whoever's running for whatever has the interest of the people at heart.
So I can't get you to announce for Congress yet, but I'm going to keep pushing. But let me ask you before I let you go, another thought that just came to my head. Civil rights, how bad, how good has it been on Arab Americans as we round the corner to September 11th? Is it getting better? Has it gotten worse? Just give us a little capsule on what you think has happened to us.
It's gotten a little bit better. We've had to undo a lot of damaging policies over the last 20 years, and there's been an amazing unification between advocates, organizers, civil rights attorneys, and organizations on the ground to undo those policies. But the remnants, the stereotypes, and the readiness to go back to those dark days still exist. And I think that's what we'll always be fighting against, is making sure we don't fall back into those dark times. And when there are crises and tragedies that happen, we don't all of a sudden default to stripping civil liberties.
All right. My guest, Tahanie Aboushi. Tahanie, thank you so much for joining us. She ran in the race for New York Manhattan District Attorney in June 2021. She came in third, but that's a bronze medal in terms of our Olympic mindset today, and it was quite an achievement. Tahanie, I hope we can bring you back on again to talk about some of the issues in the future. I really enjoyed talking with you and learning more about you.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me, Ray. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm Ray Hanania here at the Ray Hanania Show. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk with Paul Salem of the Middle East Institute about the trauma in Lebanon and Beirut, and just see what's going on over there. Tahanie, you have a nice time. We'll be right back, everybody, right after these messages.
ArabNews.com, bringing you breaking news from across the Middle East and the latest on Arabs in America. Get inside the latest headlines with expert analysis and insights at ArabNews.com. Join over 5 million Facebook fans and over 10 million monthly readers. ArabNews.com, news that matters to you.
Imagine you're on a train track. Somewhere miles away, a train is headed your way. Can't see it yet, but it's coming, slowly but surely. If you have prediabetes or you're at risk for type 2 diabetes, you may be on the wrong track, and diabetes could be heading your way. Bit by bit, the danger is getting closer and closer. So should you stay on the track you're on now, or move to make a change and reduce your risk? If you have prediabetes or you're at risk for type 2 diabetes, you may qualify for the National Diabetes Prevention Program in your local community. This one-year program could be the ongoing support you need to put you on the right track. Not only did participants lose weight, they cut their risk of type 2 diabetes in half. Ready to get on board for a healthier future? Learn more about the National Diabetes Prevention Program and what else you can do to manage and prevent diabetes at michigan.gov/diabetes. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
New Dawn Academy provides your kids with a curriculum that's rich in science, technology, engineering, and math.
We want students to really experience what problem solving looks like. What does it mean to build things together? And really working on those analytical skills is what makes New Dawn Academy's program very unique.
This school will certainly provide them with academic excellence, but also state-of-the-art buildings and inviting to students.
Are your hands feeling numb? Do you feel pain opening up a jar, turning a key? Are you noticing that your elbow and your shoulder are becoming stiff? Or were you recently injured in your arm? Hello, I'm Dr. Al-Majid Katranji, and at the Katranji Hand Center, which just recently opened down the street from the Somerset Mall, we can provide you with the latest in hand, wrist, elbow, and shoulder care. Visit us at www.katranjihandcenter.com to learn the latest techniques that we have to offer you, and I look forward to taking care of you.
Visit us in Troy at 1565 West Big Beaver Road, Building F, or call Katranji Hand Center for an appointment at 248-869-4263. That's 248-869-4263. The U.S. Arab Radio Network is proud to offer the Ray Hanania Show with veteran journalist Ray Hanania, the U.S. correspondent for the Arab News newspaper. U.S. Arab Radio broadcasts content Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. on WNZK AM 690 in Detroit, WDMV 700 in Washington, D.C., and simulcast through stations around the country. Programs will rerun from 5 till 6 p.m. Visit us on Facebook at U.S. Arab Radio, and we're also streaming live on Facebook.com/Arab News.
And welcome back to the Ray Hanania Show. This is segment 2, and we're going to be speaking with Paul Salem of the Middle East Institute about the continuing turmoil in Lebanon. Paul Salem was named president of the Middle East Institute in 2018. Prior to joining the MEI, Salem served as the founding director of the Carnegie Middle East Center in Beirut, Lebanon. Previously served as general director of the Ferris Foundation, and from 1989 to 1999 he taught at the American University of Beirut and founded and directed the Lebanese Center for Policy Studies. Paul, welcome to our radio show this morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ray. Good morning, and good morning to everybody following your lovely show.
You must have taught with some of my cousins over there. I had 2 relatives over at the American University of Beirut, Jack and Mary Hanania. You ever run into them?
I think I did. Which departments were they in?
What do I know? I don't know.
been a long time, yes.
There are not a lot of Hananias in the world, but we are a nice, narrow group of good people. But listen, you have a great background, and I thought you'd be perfect to talk to us and help us understand. 1 year ago today, I think it was, there was that massive explosion at a warehouse at Beirut's port. It took the lives of, more than 214 people. No repairs, no answers. Human Rights Watch is pointing a finger at government corruption. The government's been in turmoil. Saad Hariri couldn't form a government. We got a new guy who's still struggling. What the heck is going on in Lebanon?
Indeed, it's a terrible time in Lebanon. I actually was there yesterday. I just flew back from the country. And it's the 1-year anniversary of that explosion on August 4. There are ongoing protests right now in Beirut, leading up to the 6 o'clock p.m. hour where the blast took place a year ago. That blast came in the midst of a complete economic, banking, monetary, finance meltdown. Also came in the midst of a political uprising that had started in October 2019, so about a year before. The blast itself is a combination, I think, of 2 dysfunctions. One is large-scale corruption and unaccountability of a government oligarchy that's been in power without being held accountable for this or any other set of crimes. The other dynamic is the existence of an independent armed group, Hezbollah, in the country, which operates its own security and defense operations in coordination with Tehran and Iran. Those explosives, or that nitrate, which can be used either for fertilizer or explosives, had been in the port for a long time. Hezbollah itself had a big presence in the port, and it's possible that those materials were being used possibly in Syria. Right now, Lebanon is going through one of the worst periods in its modern history. As you said, there are attempts to form a government. We can get into that. Again, don't seem to be going anywhere. And the country is supposed to face parliamentary and presidential elections next year. We don't even know if they will happen.
Is it a case where there's just so much bad news, it's hard to focus on something? I remember when the explosion came up, the first suspicion was, well, this has to have been something related to Hezbollah. It's like a government in a government. How do you run a country with 2 powerful forces that, not necessarily working together in government? What do we know about that aspect of it, Hezbollah's role, or is it still rumor and conjecture at this point?
Well, the government and Hezbollah behind them, because Hezbollah dominates the government. Its president is their ally or their client. The current caretaker prime minister is their ally or client. The Speaker of Parliament is as well. And the government has prevented a serious investigation. Nobody from the government has taken any accountability or responsibility, although all the documentation shows that they knew and they've known it for years. But there has not been an investigation to get beyond conjecture and get to real evidence.
Why can't there be like an independent investigation by somebody? Because when the people that are responsible, and I think a lot of people feel the government is responsible, whether it was a Hezbollah arms storage area or not, whether it was corruption or not, they're blocking it. Isn't there some way to get past that so that we could actually find out? I hate to see this turn into another Rafiq Hariri issue where we don't know what happened to him. I mean, we knew what happened to him, but we never really learned what really caused his, killing until like 7 to 8 years after the fact. Is it going to take 8 years to find out what happened a year ago? Do you think?
Well, in the case of the Hariri assassination, there was an international investigation. They did find out who did it, at least allegedly, by the evidence in the court, and it didn't go anywhere because Hezbollah, some of its agents were implicated, refused to cooperate, refused to give any of their people up, and it really got nowhere. A lot of people feel certainly that there needs to be an independent international investigation that typically requires a UN Security Council resolution. And currently, Russia and probably China would block any such action from the UN Security Council. And the Lebanese themselves, because of how the Hariri investigation ended up sort of not doing anything, they don't set great hopes by that. They are set on keeping up the pressure on the political class. They hope for elections in the spring in order to make some electoral difference. But I must tell you, Ray, there's a lot of despair. I mean, Hezbollah is there through force of arms. And no matter how many elections or how many protests you hold, we saw how fiercely they fought in Syria with Iran to defend an Assad regime. People have no illusions that they will go away because of protest or an election. And until you have real sovereignty in a country, you really can't begin building proper governance.
Yeah, I mean, some critics, I've heard them say that this is Hezbollah-occupied Lebanon, the way they talk about Israeli-occupied Palestine. It's almost impossible to deal with Hezbollah. They have the upper hand. They decide everything. They have the backing of Iran. It almost seems hopeless, even just to get to the facts, let alone just to bring regime change, eliminate corruption, and just give people the representation they deserve.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I would certainly say that Hezbollah as an armed force is there by force, and there's very little that unarmed citizens can do about it. But they do not, they currently dominate the government, but a lot of that is, or some of that is through politics. That it so happens that a major party in the sort of majority Christian party, the Aounist movement, chose to ally itself with Hezbollah for its own self-regarding political reasons. That was a choice. So a lot of, that group went along with Hezbollah. It was a choice. Saad Hariri at one point tried to resist them. His father tried to resist. He was killed. He's had his own struggles trying to remain in power in Lebanon. He was rejected by the Saudis. He kind of also made a bit of an accommodation with Hezbollah. I think what we're looking at now in this public protest movement indicates or should lead to a limited change within the country, that it's not the case that everybody has to accept Hezbollah's power, has to be allied with it. Those were political choices. I think some of those will change over the next year. Hezbollah will remain, but I think its current phase of pretty complete dominance might decline in a limited way, but it will remain an obstacle to real state building.
We're on the line with Paul Salem, president of the Middle East Institute. And we're talking about Lebanon. Paul, we're going to take a quick ad break, if you don't mind. When we come back, maybe you can help us understand what needs to be done. What do we have to see? What are the steps that need to be taken to change this? Because, and again, I'm only using the Rafiq Hariri, tragedy as an example of how uncertainty went on forever, for so many years. And you're correct that they did point fingers pretty early. We knew who did it, but nothing happened with that. I'm Ray Hanania here at WNZK AM 690 Radio in Detroit and WDMV AM 700 Radio in Washington, D.C. We're broadcasting live on the U.S. Arab Radio Network at arabradio.us and at Arab News newspaper, which, by the way, if you look up the paper, they have a number of great stories delving deep into the tragedy and turmoil and challenges that Lebanon faces. Lebanon is such an important country. We want to see that change. We're at facebook.com/Arab News. I'm Ray Hanania. We're going to take our final break. When we come back, we're going to continue our discussion with Paul Salem of the Middle East Institute. We'll be right back right after these messages.
ArabNews.com, bringing you breaking news from across the Middle East and the latest on Arabs in America. Get inside the latest headlines with expert analysis and insights at ArabNews.com. Join over 5 million Facebook fans and over 10 million monthly readers. ArabNews.com, news that matters to you.
Ziyad brand. Quality products from our family to yours. Ziyad Brothers Importing offers the finest quality products, including brands like Sultan, Kraft, Nestle, Hook, Rico Picon, Donna, and many more. Ask your retailer to carry these fine products because you deserve the very best. For more information, visit our website at www.ziyad.com. That's www.ziyad.com. Ziyad, quality products from our family to yours.
When it comes to reproductive medicine, IVF Michigan Fertility Centers are the recognized leaders. With locations in Bloomfield Hills and 5 other cities in Michigan and Ohio, IVF has experts in all aspects of the field. As a founding member of IVF Michigan Fertility Centers, Dr. Nicholas Shama is one of the leading reproductive endocrinologists in Michigan and Ohio. Dr. Shama has performed over 10,000 IVF cases and has helped thousands of couples fulfill their dreams of parenthood. American board certified in both obstetrics and gynecology and reproductive endocrinology and infertility, Dr. Nicholas Shama is a very caring, compassionate, expert physician that understands not only the medical but also the emotional toil of infertility on his patients. When it's time, get personalized care from Dr. Nicholas Shama at IVF Michigan Fertility Centers in Michigan and Ohio. Call toll-free 855-952-9600, 855-952-9600. Get ready for an amazing experience at Ishtar Restaurant on 15 Mile Road in Sterling Heights. Enjoy excellent hospitality from owners Ali Al-Baghdadi and Fatty Bonham, serving the best in Mediterranean food. Try Chef Ali Al-Baghdadi's famous shawarma, the best Iraqi grills and food, and the best Arabic and international dishes. Dine in our authentic atmosphere or take out. Call 586-698-2585 or check us out on Facebook. Ishtar Restaurant practices all CDC guidelines and is open every day 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Have an amazing experience today at Ishtar Restaurant, 3625 15 Mile Road, Sterling Heights. The U.S. Arab Radio Network is proud to offer the Ray Hanania Show with veteran journalist Ray Hanania, the U.S. correspondent for the Arab News newspaper. U.S. Arab Radio broadcasts content Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. on WNZK AM 690 in Detroit, WDMV 700 in Washington, D.C., and simulcast through stations around the country. Programs will rerun from 5 till 6 p.m. Visit us on Facebook at U.S. Arab Radio, and we're also streaming live on facebook.com/Arab News.
20 years ago, we had the tragedy of September 11th, the terrorism from a group of terrorists And it had a horrible impact on Arab Americans in this country. I remember a woman came up to me and said, "I can't believe you abandoned your Christian faith to become an Arab." That comment, after I gave a big speech to a university group, pushed me into stand-up comedy, thinking, hey, if we can laugh together, we can live together. And then, of course, I bumped heads and locked horns with Jackie Mason at Zany's Comedy Club, and Jackie said he wouldn't allow me to open for him on my show. This is a whole week of my comedy shows, and he was invited on as a guest. And when he found out I was Palestinian, he refused to allow me to perform. And he passed away, by the way, this past week, and we offer our condolences to him and his family. It's just sad that we couldn't overcome that. And we also, as we come up to the 20th anniversary of September 11th, the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee has a program that begins August 5th, the 12th, the 16th, and the 24th on national security, exploring the rise of anti-Arab, anti-Muslim hate in the U.S. with Abed Ayoub. On the 16th, I'll join freelance writer Ali Yunus to talk about the impact that it had on Arab American journalism. And then they end with a program on August 24th. We'll have all that information for you soon. Right now, we're on the line and video broadcasting with Paul Salem. He's the president of the Middle East Institute, and we're talking about Lebanon and what can be done. Paul, again, well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. What needs to be done in Lebanon? What has to happen, in your opinion, to change things, to get answers, and to bring the country back on the right track?
Well, I mean, it's going to be a long slog, but there are a number of levels. From the Lebanese people themselves, they've really risen up since, as I said, October 2019. They're out in protest today. They are a major force to determine at least a big part of the future of the country. I'm very close to a lot of the groups that are organizing there. These groups are trying to mobilize, to unify, to coordinate, and to prepare for the elections, the parliamentary elections that are supposed to take place in the spring of 2022. So there's a lot that the Lebanese people need to reclaim. We mustn't forget that most of these politicians were recently elected to their positions just 3 years ago. So the people are not powerless. At a second level, the international community, I must say, has really stepped up. As we speak, there's an international conference in support of the Lebanese people, called for and headed by French President Macron, who was much more responsive to the needs of Lebanon than the Lebanese president. And the international community is extending or offering serious economic support, but requiring that there be an effective government in place, that it undertake necessary reforms, including fighting corruption and a certain number of things, in order to release billions of dollars of help in coordination with the IMF. A year into this crisis, the ruling politicians, if you want to call them that, have done nothing. They have not formed a government. They have not done an investigation, so there's very little movement there. But the international community is very serious about this level. Secondly, they've extended necessary support, humanitarian support to the Lebanese people, hundreds of thousands of which have descended into poverty. Poverty rates in Lebanon, which used to be around 10%, are now around 50%. And the international community is being very effective in helping the people. And thirdly, the international community has been supportive of the Lebanese army, which remains sort of one of the last national institutions standing, and continues to maintain a very, precarious calm, a precarious stability, and preventing the country from completely becoming a fully failed state like a Somalia or a Libya or even Lebanon back in the late 70s. So the international community is doing what it should. It also has been imposing sanctions. The U.S. has a raft of sanctions. They started with anti-terrorism, anti-Hezbollah sanctions that also included the Caesar Act, which is against the Assad regime in Syria. But they've also invoked the Magnitsky Act, which is against corruption. The Lebanese population in particular wants more information, more pressure from the international community to get information about their politicians' corruption and to help them hold their politicians accountable. The last dynamic of this is the influence of Iran. Obviously, Iran calls the shots when it comes to Hezbollah and the bigger issues, and Iran is locked in several battles with many of its neighbors in the Middle East. It's also locked in a confrontation and negotiation with the United States. And so it's been leveraging its militia allies or clients in Lebanon, in Yemen, in Syria, and in Iraq, to maintain sort of a dominance in the Arab world, but also to put pressure on the United States and its allies.
And this topic obviously deserves so much more time. We only have about 5 minutes left, but it sounds like you're saying that, one, there could be a change if we see a change at the elections in the spring, correct? The second thing is these nations around the world that are coming to help Lebanon have put a condition on funding that they need to address the corruption. But I've never heard of a corrupt government ever uncorrupting itself. And especially with a country like Iran behind this government, I just don't see anything changing. Am I being too pessimistic? Just looking back at the last 15, 20 years, or do you think that there's something that's going to make it different this time?
I think there's some things that can be changed and some things that don't seem possible to change. What is changeable, there are a number of politicians, including the current president and his party, which in the last elections got a majority, at least in the Christian seats. There are other politicians who were recently elected who are deeply mired in corruption. It's noteworthy that in the last elections 3 years ago, most of the population, wasn't terribly focused on politics or corruption because the economy was kind of okay. Their lives were going forward. They didn't seize the responsibility. I think that has changed. And I think if elections are held in the spring, and they might not happen, and the international community is helping put pressure on Lebanon to make sure those do happen, a number of those politicians might be out of office. So I agree with you that they might not be able to uncorrupt themselves, but some of them can be thrown out of office through the elections.
So it's really kind of up to the people. They need to stand up, initiate that change in the upcoming elections.
But I must warn that will be a limited change because you still have Hezbollah, you still have the force of arms. It's also important to note that next year we have presidential elections. The current president's term ends, and a new president, if properly chosen after a good election, could at least tip the balance a little bit more in the good governance direction. It won't be, Lebanon will remain crippled as long as there is an independent army, Hezbollah, that belongs to another country, that has its entire, security, defense, political game. But things need not be as bad as they are now.
Anyway, listen, Paul, thank you so much for joining us. I hope that we can bring you back on again to talk about this issue. It's so important. Honestly, it deserves more than a half hour. This is a 3-hour conversation that we've condensed, and you've really helped a lot for us to really understand what some of the challenges are. Paul Salem is the president of the Middle East Institute, and I want to thank everybody for joining us out there. I want to thank Paul. We want to thank Tahanie Aboushi for joining us in segment 1. I'm Ray Hanania. We're going to be back every Wednesday. Next week, we're going to have someone from the Middle East Institute help us understand actually what's happening in Yemen. So we will be back Wednesday at 8 a.m. Eastern Time, and we hope you will join us. Paul, again, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody, thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, Ray.